be better. That is willing on Pakistan, I believe, the worst possible outcomes. The best thing that can happen to Pakistan, obviously, is for a stable, peaceful government to emerge in Afghanistan. And that government be strong enough to stand up so you don't have to worry that it is leaning on India or anybody else, including the United States, except in the best possible way in terms of its development. Pakistan, at this point in time, understandably, would like to see some kind of political compromise in the country. Because what is ultimately the nightmare for Pakistan is not that, there's going to be a succeeding one side or the other. The ultimate nightmare for Pakistan is a civil war in Afghanistan. A civil war which will become a proxy war in which Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and I might mention, very importantly, India will be major participants. That is the worst outcome for Pakistan. How can Pakistan avoid this? It can avoid this in a number of ways, but Pakistan's current position here is one that if there could be a political compromise, but we must be very careful about the nature of that political compromise. A political solution itself is not the answer. It's got to be a political solution, clearly, which preserves the multi-complexity of Afghanistan, the pluralistic elements of Afghanistan. And I believe that Pakistan is coming to realize this. General Kiani said something not too long ago, which I thought was very important, when he said that the Talibanization of Afghanistan is that the success of the Taliban in Afghanistan, and that Talibanization is not necessarily in the interests of Pakistan. And certainly that's true if what we're talking about in this meeting here today is the future of Pakistan's democracy. And what that requires then is that we be very careful as we move here to both have the kind of military developments in the country, military developments which are going to make possible a real political settlement, and not one that we do out of weakness. Because remember, Pakistan tried that. It tried it in 6 separate agreements along the border, and every one of those failed. And why did they fail? Because they were all agreed to out of weakness. You cannot do that out of weakness, this out of weakness. Pakistan, I believe, realizes that a Taliban success in Afghanistan will bring into power a group that Pakistan may think it can control, but it cannot control. And that will have implications for Pakistan, and will create, in effect, a strategic depth of another kind than we're used to addressing. And that is a Taliban strategic depth going both ways across the board. Well, I think that's the argument I want to make here this afternoon, that our success, the international community's success in Afghanistan, in making this a minimally effective country, that's all we're really asking, but one that is ultimately a neutral country, that is in all of our interests, but particularly in Pakistan's interests. Thank you.
And Mao, they had to go their own events immediately after this, so they had to rush. But apparently we had here Jonathan Landry and Steve Cohen, and believe me, they can respond to all your spearheaded, pointed at unbothered questions in the best possible way. Don't worry about that part. I think about Pakistan, before Jonathan gets his turn to speak on this, somehow it's like catch-22. politicians think that they are never given enough opportunity to experience how to govern, because military moves in and they become out of practice. So when they come in, they cannot offer good governance. This is one of their explanations actually. And right now, as you understand, as we know, what Pakistan needs the most is competent leadership with integrity, with credibility, and real character, and we should rise to the occasion and steer the nation out of this crisis with the partnership and friendship of USA and the international community. And since Jonathan had tremendous and extensive work in that area, I will request him to speak about the future of Pakistan without sustainable democracy, and at the same time expand those canvas and tell us about his experience and what does he foresee in the near future, long-term future, and what are his policy recommendations. Please welcome Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me once again. Thank you, Nisar. Let me just quickly begin by endorsing everything that Marvin Weinbaum said, and expand a little bit very quickly on what I consider to be the growing possibility of this very worst case scenario. What Marvin left out was, I think, what could very possibly be evolve out of this disaster that begins with a failure in Afghanistan and the emergence of a proxy war in Afghanistan with Pakistan backing the Pashtun elements and India backing the non-Pashtun elements. What you essentially risk there is the development eventually of a direct confrontation between India and Pakistan. And let's not forget that both countries have nuclear weapons. And I think this is really where America's national interest really lies in this entire crisis, and it's something that none of our politicians talk about. No one really discusses the regional implications of an American failure in Afghanistan, and the idea, and how wrong I think thinking of elements within the Pakistani security establishment is about the idea that they can control somehow a new Taliban inclusive government in Kabul. Let me bring this more into Pakistan, though. Let me try to bring this more focused into Pakistan itself. But let me begin here in Washington yesterday. We had what we take to be a routine occurrence, actually, routine constitutional occurrence, with the commander-in-chief of our military, who's a civilian, firing a four-star general. Now, the last time that happened in Pakistan, there was a coup, and the four-star general, albeit he was the chief of staff, who was the subject of the replacement, took over control of the country. Which brings me to the focus of what I wanted to talk about, which is the institution of the Pakistani military and the inordinate power that it has had over Pakistan and Pakistan's security policy since the very creation of Pakistan, and how there needs to be an entire rethinking of where Pakistan's security interests lie, because that, I believe, is the only way you can really start talking about how you sustain democracy in Pakistan. I was in Pakistan to cover the 2008 elections that brought the PPP-led coalition government to power. And I have to tell you, this is not the first Pakistani election I've covered. I've covered a whole bunch of Pakistani elections, but this was the most promising democratic development I think anybody in Pakistan had ever witnessed. There was a minimal amount of violence, and there was the voice of the people was really heard. You really